Thank you all for being here today. This is great. I know the talk is titled Raw Milk Babies, but it will apply to anyone. So what a great weekend. Like she said, I'm Charlotte Smith. I own Shampooey Creamery, a pasture-based micro dairy. We are about 30 minutes southwest of here, so I have a few customers in the room too, which is wonderful. And what I would like to know from just you, so I know how I can gear the presentation to make sure we meet your needs. Who out there currently drinks raw milk? Oh, wow, great. Does anyone, are you here because you are thinking about it but you're not quite sure? Great. And is anyone, and no judgment at all because I'm here to educate, is anyone out there just deathly afraid of it? Wow, nobody. Yay! But still, we really wouldn't judge you. It's just, hopefully you would learn to be less fearful by the end. I know if my mic goes out because it sounds... Really? Oh, okay. Well, if it does that a couple more times, I'll... Okay, let's switch.
A little closer to your mouth. It's sensitive for space.
I don't think I can get it closer. It's about the same. Well, let me just try it here for a minute. Okay. So like I said, we're a pasture-based dairy, and if you're trying to find raw milk or drinking raw milk, that's really, really important for the safety and health of raw milk. We are known for our intense rotational grazing system, where cows are on fresh grass every 24 hours, because just like we're learning here this weekend, if people are eating our traditional diet, food we're meant to eat, we are healthy, and cows are the same way. When they're eating their traditional diet, which is grass, they are much healthier, and so their milk is much more nutritious, but it's also safer too, because they have a strong immune system to fight off the diseases that might affect the milk. So pasture grazing is really important. Now, there are some areas of the country where we graze our cows 9 months out of the year because the grass doesn't grow pretty much end of November, December, January. Other places, they might only be able to graze 3 or 4 months of the year, so just, you know, hopefully the cows are eating really good hay in those off months. So every part of the country you won't find exactly the same way, but we work really hard to make sure our cows are on really tall, lush green grass every day. And Oregon is well known. It's a great grass growing area on the west side of the mountain here, so we're lucky in that respect. What's really important when you're drinking raw milk is to know your farmer. So we practice transparency on our farm. All our customers have to come to the farm to pick up their milk. And it's really important. It's just so much safer when you go to the farm, you meet them, you can ask them questions, you can really find out what their practices are and know your milk is safe. And we do this through a variety of ways. Like I said, everyone picks their milk up on the farm. And I would like to think that if no one was at our farm, we would always keep ourselves in tip-top shape and everything's perfect. But knowing that 15 people a day are coming to our farm and are welcome to stick their head in the milking parlor at any time, it's a further guarantee that, you know, my employees, everybody knows that we have to be show ready at any time and be able to explain why you're doing what you're doing at any time. We hide nothing. And that's really important to me on really any small farm, especially raw dairy, but any other small farms too, where it's farm to consumer. We also teach cheese classes, which are as much about raw milk nutrition as they are about learning how to make cheese, because they just kind of go hand in hand. We have a farm camp, and this has been amazing, putting kids back in touch with their food. And by doing so with the kids, the parents naturally get in touch too, and there's a level of compassion they develop that they don't have before. And it comes through working with animals that you realize are providing the food that is making you healthy and keeping you alive in some cases. So we just, again, our farm is about so much more than just producing safe raw milk. It's about making sure that it's a very holistic enterprise for us. This is my daughter, and she jumped off the school bus one day, and I was there, and she came over and fed the calf. And so during calving season, if we have calves around, people are welcome. If they show up to pick up their milk, they can pull out a bottle and feed the calves. And again, you vote differently and you think differently when you're sitting there giving a baby cow its bottle of milk and hearing it suck, and it's great. This is me just bringing in the cows earlier this spring for milking. Our family, we got into raw milk 8 years ago, and at that point I had never heard of raw milk before. If I'd heard the term, I didn't pay attention to it. And we ate what I thought was a healthy diet: skinless, boneless chicken breasts for dinner with broccoli and low-fat milk on our grape nuts. And so I thought we were really healthy. But both my kids, who were, when each of them turned 6 years old, developed eczema. And it was really severe. And so 8 years ago, my daughter had had it for 6 years and my son for 3 years, all over large parts of his body, big patches of it. My daughter had it completely covering her face and eyelids. So not only was it really painful and itching incessantly, but people would look at her and wonder what's wrong with her, because just these horrible red patches all over. And as a mother of young children, or a parent of children, you know you will do anything to relieve your kid's suffering. Well, in that 6 years, there was nothing I could do. I would go to the doctor. He would give us our steroid cream and say, this is really all you can do, and hopefully they'll grow out of it. And oh, by the way, they're going to get asthma too, and so here's an inhaler in case they're coughing. And we took many inhalers home from doctor visits, and luckily they never developed asthma. I never had to use them, but that was the doctor's answer. So then I was talking with someone who lived in California, where raw milk is legal, and so a lot more people know about it. You can go into a store and buy it on the shelves. And they had been to a talk by an MD, Dr. Thomas Cowan. If you know him, he co-authored a book with Sally, The Fourfold Path to Healing. And he had mentioned that people were using raw milk to help cure their kids' eczema, allergies, and asthma. So as a mother desperate to try anything, I was like, well, where do I find this? And so it was a lot harder to find 8 years ago in Oregon than it is today, and it's still hard to find. But I tracked down a Weston Price chapter leader, and again, I'd never heard of Weston Price before, and she hooked me up with someone, and we got our first raw milk from the Tauschers. Do any of you know the Tauschers? Yeah? They have a big food co-op and many, many connections in Portland. They don't do raw milk anymore, but their family buys their 6 gallons a week from us. So it's interesting how that's come full circle in 8 years. And so we came home with our raw milk, and I didn't have any expectations, because anything anyone had suggested up until that point, of course, had never worked. Herbs and vitamins and creams, and nothing worked on the eczema. My kids we all started drinking it, just a glass or two a day, and within 2 weeks, my son came and showed me the backs of his hands, which for 3 years previously were constantly red and scabby and bloody from itching. 3 years every day. And within 2 weeks after starting raw milk, they were cleared up like backs of my hands today. And it was just, again, a mom suffering kids. You think, wow, this is a miracle. You know, what happened? So I've spent the last 8 years studying what happened and experiencing this kind of healing with hundreds of other people in the meantime. And it's just amazing. And I hope to inspire you today, if you're not already drinking raw milk, to just make one little change. If you add yogurt or kefir or anything into your diet, you will just get many health benefits from it. Even if you're already really healthy, other little things you didn't know you had will go away, because I hear this all the time. So my older daughter, who's now 20, it took about 6 months for her eczema to go away completely, and it did. And I've learned since then that the sooner you introduce children to raw milk, and the longer they drink this raw milk over time, the stronger their immune system is. So she had just had it longer. She was older. It took her longer, but she did get rid of her eczema too, and hasn't had it since. And then in that first year that we drank raw milk, that was the only change we made in our diet. I looked back over that year, and where I was used to going to the doctor at least once for one round of antibiotics per kid through the winter. We didn't have any antibiotics. We had no sickness to speak of. And so then we started adding other traditional foods. And now 8 years later, I haven't had antibiotics in 8 years, or an ear infection or anything. We might get a runny nose for a couple days and a sneeze, but that's the extent of it. We just don't get sick. And the greatest testimony, personal for me, is I had my third child 6 years ago, and so I was pregnant and drinking raw milk before pregnancy, through breastfeeding. As soon as she could hold a sippy cup at 9 months, she had raw milk in it, and that's all she ever had in it. She never had a bottle. She either nursed or drank raw milk and raw milk yogurt. And she's in mainstream public school now, and when other kids are dropping like flies in the winter with the flu and strep throat and just ungodly diseases there, and they get really sick diseases today, she never gets sick. She'll get a runny nose for a couple days and a sneeze, and that's it. And she goes to her well baby checkups, and even the pediatrician says, I don't know her, I never see her. Who is this child, this magic miracle child? And I say, well, we drink raw milk, and it's kind of just over his head. He doesn't even stop to consider that what we eat might be keeping my child healthy. But that was the biggest, aha over the last 8 years, is what we eat today affects our health today. Because I thought I was eating healthy to make sure I lived a long time or something. I wasn't realizing that what I ate today will prevent me from getting a cold tomorrow. So it's just amazing how that has continued to sink in over the years. And now I have two kids, 17 and 20, who will always make sure they have access to raw milk and pastured foods, and they know firsthand the healing. And then my 6-year-old is just a way of life with her. She knows she's got to eat kefir every day and things like that. So that's our story. And since then, we've been in the business for 4 years, and I have 120 weekly customers that come pick up their milk, families, 120 families. So we have hundreds of people drinking our milk now and over the years. And I have heard hundreds of health recovery stories in that 4-year time period. And they say, there's that saying that anecdotal evidence is a mom's science. And so, yeah, there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, there's no scientific proof of raw milk doing this or that. Well, I have hundreds and hundreds of people of all socioeconomic levels, from physicians and dentists and stay-at-home moms and school teachers who will back me up and say, listen, I know that test or that science report says this from that university, but here's what raw milk did for our family, or kefir or yogurt. And just incredible. So anyway, we just love being able to do that, to help hear those success stories. So how we then finally ended up with our cows is we had the land, and I knew I could produce better raw milk than I could find anywhere, because I could not find grass-fed raw milk for cows that were on fresh grass every day. And we had lost our raw milk resource a couple of times, and my kids really depended on it, so I didn't want that to happen again. So I started researching getting our own cow. And I spent about 6 months actively researching it by visiting other raw milk dairies, talking to everyone I could, big dairies, small dairies, pasteurized milk dairies, as well as raw. And so that when I brought my cow home, I knew how to test and make sure the milk was clean. I knew how to produce it safely, and we had happy, healthy customers. And I've since, in the last 4 years, learned that not every producer does it that way. So a lot of people, because I get the phone calls from people who say, hey, I bought a cow today, and I'm going to sell the milk tomorrow. What should I do? And it's something that I spent 6 months and thousands of dollars getting prepared for, and I think, wow, how can you do that and feel safe and responsible? There's a lot of people out there that don't realize the risk they're taking. So I do raw milk dairy consulting. I help other people set up their dairies to be safe and successful and sustainable, even if they only have one cow. So we do a lot of education, because it's just a travesty that we don't have a pool of safe raw milk in this country. I have a waiting list that has grown even more since we've been here this weekend, and most people will have to wait at least 6 months for milk, and it's terrible to me that I have to be the one that makes the decision of does this family where dad has cancer get the raw milk first, or this family where their newborn baby has eczema all over his body get the raw milk first. So it's just terrible that in this country we have to be that way. So I really hope that over, in my lifetime, that we will end up in 10 or 20 years from now with just raw milk everywhere, sort of like in California where you can go into New Seasons and buy it off the shelves, because it's just so amazing for health. So now we have our own cows and we have an unlimited supply of milk for our family, which is a very secure feeling. All right, so raw milk is real milk. And what I learned again over the years, and I still get this question, is, well, what's the difference? And the main difference, of course, is pasteurization. You kill and destroy everything that's good in that milk, everything that helps you digest it, and everything that helps you absorb the nutrition in the milk. So pasteurized milk is really just empty calories. And it's even bigger than that, because pasteurized milk is our #1 most allergenic food in America. So not only is it empty calories, it's building up this allergic reaction in your body that shows up in everybody a little differently. So it might be eczema, asthma, allergies in a variety of people. It's autoimmune diseases. It's leading to all sorts of diseases that we're not supposed to have. Our immune system is supposed to be able to fight off, but pasteurized milk is causing that. So raw milk, on the other hand, has everything in it you need to build your immunity. And the other thing about, I know Sally touched on it earlier, but what happened with my children too is when you are pregnant and you give birth and the baby passes through the birth canal, it ingests what it ingests from the mother is its gut flora, its foundation for gut flora. So when I'm on this processed food diet 20 years ago and 17 years ago, my kids came in and they got very little good bacteria, healthy bacteria during the birthing process. So they started out at a deficit. So their eczema didn't just start at 6 years old. It started at birth, when they were not equipped with the probiotics in their system to build their immune system. So we're just rebuilding what I did not give them at birth. And then my 6-year-old, on the other hand, she had all sorts of wonderful gut flora, whatever. The probiotics that she got, her foundation has been really, really strong. So yes, it's important to feed your babies healthy, but moms have to start before birth, making sure, before they even get pregnant. And at any point, don't think, oh, it's too late, I missed the cutoff. Just start where you are. If you've had 2 kids, start now and you will fix it. But if you do it before your kids are born, you will have kids with amazing, hardy immune systems. This Thomas Edison quote, "The doctor of the future will give no medicine, but rather interest his patients in the care of human frame through lifestyle and diet." And again, 8 years ago, I would have read that and thought, oh, that's a nice quote. But now I have firsthand experience with our family and the hundreds of people I talk to that you can have complete immunity if you eat a traditional diet that is it's got to be full of probiotics from somewhere. Pills won't work as well as raw milk, yogurt, or kefir. Okay, so milk. I also get a lot of questions from people that ask, well, aren't we supposed to, once you're weaned, you don't need milk anymore? Again, that story doesn't really hold with it's like, who would say that? Because of the experience I've had with us and hundreds, probably now thousands of people, including humans have been drinking milk for thousands of years. The earliest human artifacts included vessels containing milk, residues of milk. But what happened about 150 years ago is there was the War of 1812, and we could no longer get whiskey in America, so we had to build distilleries, and distilleries were in the cities where the people were, and there's not a lot of transportation for people to get in and out of the city back then. So these distilleries have these spent brewer's grains, the grain that is left over after you make whiskey. There's nothing left. There's no vitality in this grain, no energy. But they didn't have a way to efficiently get it out of the city. So they came up with this brilliant idea of charging dairy farmers 10 cents a day to tie their cows up at the distillery and eat all the grains they could, so they didn't have to haul the grains away, and they could get milk to the people in the city, because it was also not really difficult to get country milk chilled into the city. So the other thing is, if you've ever been around dairy cows, they're very docile, and they will do anything you ask them, and they will take abuse without ever complaining. And so these cows were tied up at these distilleries in one place. They were never moved because there's no pasture. And they would have one calf, and they would give milk for, maybe 6, 8, 10 months. And one day they would give their last milk and fall over dead without ever complaining. So very high death rate and disease rate in cows. And it was terrible how they were treated. And people didn't even think about it because they don't complain. And so they had to, the death rate of children under 5 years old was 50%. They also didn't understand germs and bacteria, and people with tuberculosis are milking the cows, and so people are getting tuberculosis. They didn't understand how this transmitted. So they came up with mandatory pasteurization. And like I say at the very end there, mandatory pasteurization was an 18th century solution to an 18th century problem. So we needed pasteurization back then, and it worked. The death toll dropped in children from 50%. It dropped dramatically. But we don't need it today. We have the technology to test the milk today, to know that today's milk that is leaving our farm is safe and pathogen-free. We have that technology, but it's not being used, and we have this culture and this mindset of pasteurization, and we're scared. We've had fear ingrained into us. And by the way, now we can ship milk from China to America, and it doesn't have to be refrigerated for months. So it's become a part of our culture to pasteurize. So it's going to take a lot to retrain everybody's thinking that milk needs to go back to being local. And it is. Fluid milk sales decrease every year because more and more kids are developing these allergies and asthmatic reactions to drinking pasteurized milk. So things are slowly changing just as more and more people get sick. And so this was a really interesting story. I wondered how this even proliferated. Louis Pasteur, of course, the father of pasteurization, we all know about, but he had a colleague named Claude Bernard that I had never heard about, but most French people have heard about. They were both in France at the time. And Claude Bernard's idea, he understood people as having, everybody had their own individual battleground, he calls, that you are able to build up through nutrition and the way you eat. You could build that up and have complete immunity, and the person, each individual, is responsible for building up their bodies and their immune system. And they would argue, he would fight with Louis Pasteur, who understood it mechanistically, that no, the individual doesn't have the power. They need to go to a doctor and get a pill, and the doctors have the power to heal you. You are not responsible for healing yourself. And also, because of this, we need to have you need to be in a sterile environment. So that still is how we are in our culture today. You'll see babies where the moms won't even set them on the ground without a sanitized blanket, and the binky, if it drops on the ground, you give them a boiled one. They're so it's so ingrained in us to keep our environment sterile because we aren't capable of fighting off disease. But he admitted at the end of his life that Claude Bernard was right. However, it's stuck with us ever since. And the reason Louis Pasteur won out is Claude Bernard was a quiet man and just did his work. Louis Pasteur was a very flamboyant, outspoken man, and he traveled in society with the movers and shakers. And when you're with the movers and shakers of society, you find the media and the medical professionals. So all the money and the media and Louis Pasteur were all tied up together, and so everyone believed in him, and that was what his ideas were, what were proliferated. I love this picture of this little baby here because this is kind of how my 6-year-old grew up, but most mothers and doctors would just freak if they saw something like that happen. But if your baby is born, coming out the birth canal of a mom who's been eating lots of probiotic-rich foods, you can set them on the ground like that. They're just going to have a immune system of iron and be able to fight anything off. But most people would just cringe at that. So they should be equipped at birth. And like I said earlier, you can backtrack, and if your kids are older, you can make up for that. And I have a lot of friends who don't eat the way I do and don't understand this way of eating, who are having babies with acid reflux at 3 months old. I mean, I never heard of that until the last few years, and covered in eczema. And many people come to our dairy for preventative reasons. They just want to be healthy, and they're hearing about raw milks. But I would say a third to a half of our customers come to us for health reasons because their doctor has said, I can't help you, I can't help your baby. So mom gets on the internet, and I say mom because it's usually mom who's buying the groceries and seeking the farm fresh food. So I'm usually dealing with the mothers who call, and they've been Googling, how to improve their health and come up with raw milk and are led to us. So I see it growing. It's this whole group here this weekend is really into it. But I was telling my husband, there's 3 million people in Portland, and 450 of them are here learning about traditional foods. So we have a long way to go. But in public, the generally accepted view is that microbes cause illness, and we need to be in this sterile environment. Hopefully, we can change that. So in raw milk probably the most important thing are the enzymes. When you cook food, you lose enzymes. That's why bone broth is a great part of traditional diet, meats, grass-fed meats, all that. But as soon as you cook them, you lose the enzymes. So you've got to eat foods where you've got lots of enzymes, because they're the substances which make life possible. Nothing in our body will work without enzymes. And they start to be destroyed at 118 degrees, and they're all destroyed by 160 degrees. So every enzyme is killed at a different temperature, so the higher you get, the more you kill. There's this trend with low-temp pasteurization, vat pasteurization of, I think it's 140 degrees. And I've had some people say, well, that's as good as raw, but it's not. It's still pasteurized milk. You've probably killed 75 to 80% of the enzymes in that milk. So pasteurized milk, it's still going to give an allergenic response. Raw milk is still the only way you're going to get all those enzymes that you need. I mean, raw milk versus pasteurized milk. And even just to give you some context, milk comes out of the cow at 100 degrees. So it's barely more than our skin temperature. And so 118 degrees is not very warm. It's, that's your tap water is hot. Tap water is usually even warmer than that. So it's not very warm where you start killing things. The principal enzymes in raw milk, you don't need to memorize these unless you're a med student or something, but I want you to see the trend of these, because the enzymes in raw milk do 3 things. They're there to kill bad bacteria, they're there to help you absorb and assimilate the vitamins and minerals, and they're there to help you digest the raw milk. So every enzyme has a different role. So the first one, lactoperoxidase, destroys bad bacteria. The lactoferrin helps you assimilate the iron in milk. The amylase aids digestion. Lipase, fat-splitting enzyme, also aids digestion. Phosphatase, one that is the check that milk, the complete absence of phosphatase means it's been completely pasteurized, because that one is destroyed at the highest temperature. And then the last, okay, there it is, sorry. Fungistatic, bacteriostatic, antiviral properties, inhibits the growth of parasites, and lactoperoxidase destroys bad bacteria at the end. So there have been many studies where they have taken raw milk and they have injected a little bit of salmonella or something in it, and they will check it every hour after that, and the pathogen amounts will decrease because you've got these enzymes in there that will destroy that. Now, that doesn't mean all raw milk is completely safe. There are still times where dairies that don't have the practices we do, if you get, a big old handful of there's no way that you have enough enzymes in there to overcome that. So we're talking about everything in it to keep it safe. So you've still got to do the work and make sure you're getting it from a safe source, but it naturally has anything in there to help take care of other pathogens. And also, I have a lot of people say, well, I'm lactose intolerant. Well, again, you've got everything in the raw milk to aid in the digestion of it. So over the 4 years we've been serving milk to hundreds and hundreds of people, I have probably had maybe one person a year who comes back and says, I just still can't digest even the raw milk. So it's a very small percentage of people can't digest raw milk. Most babies do just fine. And again, goat's milk, raw goat's milk would be a little easier to digest than raw cow's milk. So if your baby has a problem with raw cow's milk, seek out some goat's milk. It's naturally homogenized. The fat molecules are smaller, so it's a little easier to digest. But other than that, most people can digest raw milk just fine. And our whole family is lactose intolerant of pasteurized products. If we go out for pizza or ice cream or cheese from pasteurized milk, we pay the price for that with gastrointestinal upset. But raw milk dairy products are probably, since we own the cows, a big part of our diet. 30 to 40% of our diet is raw milk dairy products, and we're all just fine. So, pasteurization's damage. So you look at all that: loss, destroy, degrade, lose the calcium, phosphorus, B vitamins, B12, lose all the enzymes, degrades vitamin A, and of course destroys all the beneficial bacteria. All the probiotics that should be naturally in milk are destroyed with pasteurization. So just nothing left. Also, a good story, we have a whole group of midwives from various birthing centers around the area that buy milk from us, because many of them started a few years ago. There's, group strep B that they test you for when you're pregnant, and if you have it, you have to go on antibiotics when you give birth, so it's not passed to the child. So 2 years ago, this one birthing center in Portland started, whenever they had their initial consult, whether the woman was thinking about getting pregnant or pregnant, they gave her some heritage, sold her some heritage kefir grains, made her get on kefir. They've had 0 cases of group B strep in the last 2 years. And this is a big birthing center, probably 7 or 8 midwives, lots of women giving birth, and no group B strep from kefir. Do you know what this is? Yeah, this is a heritage kefir grain. And I'm not here to sell anyone on anything, but I can tell you that we recovered a lot of our health due to raw milk, and a lot of people do. But now that we teach nutrition classes, and my husband works as a counselor with people, when the raw milk is great, and raw milk yogurt is even better, but when people start taking kefir every single day, it's like miracles happen, mountains are moved. It's amazing the health recovery stories we have from kefir. Another interesting thing to me is how many mothers come to get their raw milk for their family and their kids are constipated. And I did a blog post about this, maybe a year ago, kids and constipation, and before I hit post, I thought, I hate, constipation right there in the headline out on the internet, and it was amazing the response I got from that, from people saying, yeah, my kids are constipated. And I wrote it about kids because I have many, many adults tell me they're constipated, but I didn't want to write about adults and constipation. But it was amazing the feedback I got that says, well, yeah, not only are my kids, but I've been constipated for 8 years. So Doctors won't tell you this, but your bowel movements and the success of that and the texture and all that is related to your gut flora and the bacteria in your digestive system. It's not about drinking more water, eating an apple, eating prunes, getting more fiber. I've had so many people, the doctors have prescribed, got them on Metamucil every day. We switched those people over to kefir, and for everyone it's different. You know, cup a day. My husband drinks a quart a day. I drink a cup and a half a day. It's different for everyone. But when you get those probiotics in your system every single day, it regulates everything in there. And the opposite is true too. If your chronic diarrhea is a problem, kefir will balance that out too. And I know this again from the hundreds and hundreds of people and the health recovery stories we have. So this mom came to me, and I asked her if I could share her story this weekend. She had 4 kids, and, she has 4 kids, and she came to me about a year ago, and her kids each had various behavioral and physical issues. Nothing so bad. Well, she was just living with it. To me, it seemed like it would have been a nightmare, but she was just accepting it. And she heard about our raw milk, so she was trying to get healthier, just wanted to buy raw milk. And in the process of our first meeting, she mentioned her 8-year-old son, who was in 3rd grade. Since what started when he was 5 years old, he started to be constipated. And a year ago, it was to the point where he was going about once a week. He had stomach pain, horrible, every single day. He had leakage in his underwear every day to the point that he smelled like a toilet. And it was embarrassing and humiliating for them to go anywhere as a family, even church on Sunday, because their son smelled like an outhouse. And he went to her house, and her house smelled like Lysol and bleach, and it was just horrible for this family to live with. And I talked her into, raw milk is great, kefir will help him. And long story short, it took her 6 months, but he is normal now for 6 months. For the first time since he was 5 years old, he has normal bowel movements. And at that point, over those 3 years, all the doctors would say was give him Metamucil. That's what she was doing. And this is a woman, too. She doesn't cook, so it's really hard. She's 100% processed food diet. So she's slowly learning from us, she tried bone broth once, and I said, just take on something new every 2 months. I told her daughter was eating a bagel for breakfast, and she was suffering from allergies and behavior issues at school. And I said, well, what's she eat for breakfast? Bagel with nothing on it. And I said, well, does she eat eggs? And yes. I said, well, the best thing for her, cook her a couple eggs for breakfast. She said, well, then I'd have to cook. And so she doesn't even, and I'm not saying that to judge her, I'm just saying that this is actually very common. I have so many people show up at our farm that don't know how to cook these days. And I grew up on a farm, it was just something we all did. So we teach cooking in our classes too, cooking these traditional foods, because a lot of people don't know how to prepare them. But the fact that she turned her son's constipation around, and again, it started when he was 5, but that's not when it really started. This has been with him from birth. And her other children's issues are healing too. And so we have people that have another amazing result. One of the most common things we hear from people who start on kefir is acid reflux goes away, to the point that they get off their prescription meds that they've been on for years. And it goes away completely. And now I'm, again, like I mentioned earlier, starting to hear about babies 3 months old that are diagnosed with acid reflux, and having trouble sleeping, and they're given Prilosec at this young age, which is killing any little bit of gut bacteria they might have gotten from breastfeeding is being killed too by all these prescription medications. So if we could just figure out a way to get probiotics into them, it's wonderful. And it's not easy. When you start a kid at 8 years old on kefir, it's a struggle. It's really hard to get them to eat it. So we had her make smoothies with raw honey and frozen berries, and she had to sit there and watch him drink it because he's used to yogurt out of a tube that's blue. And so she told him it was yogurt, and she had to make sure he drank it, otherwise he would dump it out. So it's hard to get older children and adults, and as probably many of you know, your spouses, to come on board. But it can be done, and you will have amazing health recovery in your family because of it. This is my little cousin, and she's the newest baby to the Shampoo Creamery customer community family. She was born last Tuesday. What's amazing to me, this picture was taken when she was like 2 hours old. And I don't know about you, but my kids were not that cute at 2 hours. She's so pretty. But her mom is my cousin. She was our first raw milk customer 4 years ago. She knew we were getting ready. And so she's been on raw milk since, for the last several years. She had her first baby. And that's like a perfect Weston Price little head right there. So yeah, so amazing, so healthy. And a lot of people will ask, well, what about I'm pregnant, or I'm nursing, or my 6-month-old, is raw milk safe? And we probably have 10 to 12 babies born a year from our customers. So again, 120 families, so about 10% of our moms are pregnant and nursing at all times. And they have amazingly easy births. Our raw milk babies don't have the allergies, eczema, asthma, acid reflux, and sleeping issues and all that other people's babies are getting, because they've got those magic probiotics in there. And this is a field trip for my daughter's class, again, trying to put kids back in touch with the farm. And often what I'll do is kids will come, the mom will bring the kid to the farm to get their raw milk, and they'll talk about whatever physical pain they have, and the mom can't get them to change, but we'll talk about it with them and say, if you could feel better, would you eat this every day? And some of them don't even drink milk. They've never drank milk because they thought it was bad for them. So putting kids back in touch with, this is the animal that's so special, that makes the food, that keeps you alive and makes you healthy, has an amazing impact on everyone. When I was at school this spring, the moms were hanging around the playground talking, and one mom just casually mentioned that she had been to the doctor 10 times in the last 10 weeks with any one of her 3 kids. 10 times in 10 weeks. And that was okay with her. I mean, she wasn't looking for alternatives. And I was like, wow. And I didn't say anything, but I'm thinking in my head, I never go to the doctor with my kids, and except for well baby appointments. So maybe once a year do we go to the doctor, if that. Here's 10 times in 10 weeks, and infections and antibiotics and all sorts of things. And not once does anybody ever think to mention to her that, it doesn't have to be this way. You can help this with food. Not only can you help it with food, you could help it. You could start them on kefir today, and within 2 months not be going to the doctor at all and not getting ear infections anymore. So it's very immediate. So there are some studies, like I said earlier, my anecdotal evidence over the last 4 years with hundreds and probably thousands of people. That's my research, and I know that you can have remarkable health eating this way. But people still want the scientific backup. And there are studies coming out, raw milk studies. It's been really difficult, though, because if a university professor or a researcher, if word gets out that they're going to do a study on raw milk, their funding is pulled or they're fired. So because of the politics around it. So it's been really hard to have these studies out. But this Parzival study was interesting because it's almost exactly what we saw on our farm. Not 15,000, but I'll bet we've seen 1,000. So 15,000 children ages 5 to 13 over a 7-year period. Raw milk consumption was the strongest factor in reducing the risk of asthma and allergy. Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad that's out there. But when you drink raw milk and you see your baby's healthy and you never go to the doctor, it's like, that's great, but I know what it does firsthand. So it's amazing when you see this firsthand how important it is. And this is something, if you're in Sally's presentation earlier, she talked about activator X, this vitamin K2 and grass-fed butter. Really, really, sorry about the mic here. So it's responsible for the deposition of calcium and phosphorus, crucial to your reproductive system, healthy nervous system, inversely associated with heart disease. And raw milk also from grass-fed cows contains conjugated linoleic acid, which has anti-cancer effects. So we sell the raw milk, and in Oregon you're only allowed to sell raw milk. But we teach people how to then go home and make kefir with it and make your grass-fed butter. And that's like a fast food in our house. Is if my daughter's late for getting on the school bus, we'll make her a piece of toast from our soaked grain sprouted bread with about half an inch thick of butter on it, and that's her fast food. She'll run out the door eating that to get on the bus. So if you make it, it's hard to buy, very expensive to buy if you can find it, but you can make it at home too, and it's wonderful for so many reasons. And another part of my presentations revolve too, I like to send a message about finding safe raw milk, because it wasn't until I became a raw milk producer that I remembered 8 years ago when I went and found our first raw milk. I didn't ask a thing. I didn't ask are the cows healthy, or are the cows disease-free, or do you use hot water, or do you sanitize your equipment? I knew nothing about that. I didn't ask a thing. I just put complete trust in this person and took the milk, and we had a really good source, luckily. But then I started milking my own cows, and then I got better and better as time went on, and then I realized looking back that because in Oregon the way the laws are, anyone can go out and get a cow and start milking it, and that's exactly what happens. Anyone will go do it, and there's a huge learning curve, and I feel like I was lucky I didn't make anyone sick that first year, and I researched it and I did all the right things, but there's so much more I know now about milking cows and contamination and cross-contamination, and so I really work with people to try to find safe raw milk, because I have a waiting list, I can't help everybody out there. If you have to go find your own raw milk, remember, you're the mom, you're in charge of feeding your family, these are your babies that you're feeding, you've got to make sure it's done safely. And just in case you don't know, the law in Oregon is you can have 3 cows or fewer to sell raw milk, and people have to drive to the farm and get it. So that's why you can't buy it in stores. And it's very expensive to produce on a small scale. The profit margin is really small. That's why it's hard to find raw milk, because it takes a lot of people find out once they get into it how expensive it is to continue producing it. So if you're looking for raw milk for your family, you've really got to have the confidence to go out and question the farmer. And this sounds really easy, but I'll have moms come to me and say, you know what, he's the authority. He's the guy with the farm and the cows. Who am I to go ask him, do you use hot water, or do you use teat dip? I don't know this stuff, but you've really got to just stand up straight, get a backbone, be confident, go out there, and if the farmer won't ask those questions, then I wouldn't buy milk from them, because again, it's your babies, your family you're feeding. So there are lots of things to look for, but I can't, you can't become an expert overnight. So one of the best ways to find out if it's safe is find a raw milk dairy that tests, and the tests are in the form of standard plate count and coliform counts. Because most farmers will say, sure, we test the milk, and that's it. And it's not this test, so they make you think they're testing. But a standard plate count and a coliform count, those tests don't make the milk clean. They don't make the milk safe. They don't guarantee the milk. But when they show you those tests, if those test results are way out of line, they aren't going to show them to you, for one thing, or they're going to learn and make changes. So that's what I encourage people to do, is make sure you find a dairy that tests. Those two things, and the results are on this page. You want a standard plate count of 5,000 per mil or less, and a coliform count of 20 or less. And this is, I see some of you taking pictures. I've had people argue with me and say, no, there's no way a mom can know what to ask for. It's too many numbers. It's a big critique of like the Raw Milk Institute, that how can people look for all that? Well, you can put those 2 numbers in your iPhone, or your phone, and go to your farm you're checking out, and if the standard plate count is lower than 5,000, coliform lower than 20, then you see 3 months worth of those tests, the latest, most recent 3 months worth, then you know it's safe milk. And to give you some context, the standard plate count shows the milk and the equipment, how clean the equipment is. And our standard plate counts on our farm are usually less than 100. They're usually 0, but you can't report them You have to report them as less than 100. 200, I think the highest standard plate count we ever get is 500. So that's to give you an idea. So 5,000, it's pretty easy to attain a standard plate count of less than 5,000, especially if you're doing all the right things every day. And coliform counts, same thing. We usually get a 0, but we can get a 1, 2, and 3. I think 3 is maybe the most coliforms we ever got. I work with a lot of farms who test their raw milk for the first time. Maybe they've been selling raw milk for 3 years, and then they come to me and we work together to test it, and they'll have a coliform count of 900. So, you know, there's something in there. When you have 900 coliforms in there, there's something in there that's not supposed to be there. So you don't have to have a complete microbiology education to buy raw milk, but if you just have those two numbers in mind when you look for it and buy milk within those limits, you'll be safe. And the farmers should be very transparent with that. We put ours on our milk fridge where customers get the milk and on the internet. So the test results, we encourage people to post them where everyone can see them.
What does somatic mean?
Well, so it's an indication of mastitis. So somatic cells are the cells that if a cow, it may not have mastitis yet, but it's coming on, they'll send somatic cells to that area to fight it. So a high somatic cell count without mastitis is actually a good thing because you know the cow is having the immune response it's supposed to. So if you have a very high somatic cell count, it could be an indicator that you're about to get mastitis if that hasn't shown up yet. And so you can treat it. You can put on, there's herbal creams you can put on and bring that back down and fight off the mastitis. So those are the cells that come in that immune response. Yeah, Craig?
In like California or Washington, when they sell the raw milk at the store, is it different for each state?
When it's certified grade A, in California and Washington, yes, these tests are already done. The government comes and takes the milk and tests it. You know, representatives take it from them and test it. So I have to ship mine out and do it myself. But yes, it's already done. If it's retail sales in a grocery store, it meets grade A standards. Yeah. Yes? I spend $30 a month, including shipping to a certified lab in Bellingham, Washington. And I do a certified lab. I don't have to. My vet is next door, and he charges $10. It's about $15 to get it done at my local vet. So $15 to $30. Yeah? Can you send your milk? You mean that?
Milk that we bought, or does it have to be done by the farmer?
It doesn't have to be done by the farmer, but these numbers are going to grow. So by the time you bring it home and you have it in your fridge, maybe at a different temperature, it's not going to be as reliable. It really should be done on the farm. And if you let it sit out on your counter for 15 minutes and then put it away at some point, the standard plate count will be really high because all the good bacteria has been multiplying in there. So it really needs to happen at the farm or there. So you can, if you're worried. It would be better, though, if you're buying it from a farm who doesn't test, to give them $30 and, you know, you're going to pay it anyway. Give them the $30 and say, will you test your batch of milk once a month? Or come up, because it is very costly. And some farmers will say, well, I just can't afford the $30 a month. Support them, encourage them in raising the price to cover the cost of testing because it's so important. Yeah.
If they do,
Yeah.
If they do test, maybe just ask them to see it as a consumer. I could say, could I see that? Or
I think absolutely they should post it. If they test and they say, sure, we test, but they won't show you, well, there's a reason. Because this farm-to-consumer idea is wonderful, but it means the consumers have a lot of responsibility, too. You've got to ask the hard questions. You've got to say, well, where is the test? Can I see it?
And if you went to a farm and it was off, would you say just walk away or come back next month and say, did you off? Like, is it easy to improve that?
Yes. That's the other interesting thing is you can improve this from the morning milking to the evening milking. You can get a 900 coliform count in the morning and bring it down to under 20 by evening. So it's just a matter, unless the cow is sick, and then, you know, you shouldn't be milking that cow. But if it's something on your equipment, you can clean it immediately. I've never met a farmer who will post their results, though, if they're not good. So what they're going to do is quietly, you know, call me or get help to improve. And then what I tell them is test every couple of days until you get them good. Yeah. But you can turn it around. Yeah, you had a question?
Are you testing once a month?
I test once a month. Yeah.
There's a farmer in Pennsylvania who now has his own lab set up.
Yep, you can test. There's different testing is interesting because you don't take making somebody sick on a raw milk dairy is usually a gradual process. You don't have a dairy that is very clean and tests every month and has great results who all of a sudden next week gives a bunch of people E. coli. It doesn't happen that way. It's a very gradual thing. So what testing every month does is you can see a trend, and if your numbers start to pick up, maybe your standard plate count is 100 this month, and the next month it's 1,000, and then the next month it's 2,000. You know there's a gasket in your equipment, or there's a hose that hasn't been cleaned, or something isn't being done right. So it's a gradual thing. So that's why if you see 6 months worth of really good test results, you know that, okay, they have a really good cleaning program in place, because it's not like it's getting worse and worse.
And the reason for him doing that is just the pressure against raw milk in that area and the pressure.
Yeah. There's some, you have to be careful about testing on your own farm. He probably has the resources to do that, and I wouldn't, I don't want to grow pathogens on my farm, so I send it out. When you're only a 2-3 cow operation, sending it out is the best thing. Yeah.
Do both of your cows test the same level?
Nope. Yeah, we have, every cow is different, and you will find the cows that test higher. The standard plate count shows more the health of the cow. So I have a cow who tests at about 500 on the standard plate count every month, and all the others are less than that. And she's a cow who, you can just tell by looking at her, her immune system isn't quite as strong, and so when it's time to choose a hamburger cow next time, she'll probably be the one. But 500 is a really good standard plate count. She's a really healthy cow, but her immune system is just a little weaker than our other cows. So yeah, you'll have cows that test differently. But that's the beauty. On a small dairy like ours, you can test the cows individually. On a big dairy, they won't, if they've got 20 cows, they won't do 20 individual tests. They'll just do a bulk tank test. And you can mask those things. When you have 20 cows' milk going into a bulk tank, you can have a cow with mastitis going in there, and you don't catch it for a couple weeks, and it's mixed in there, but it's diluted, so it's good. But there's some drawbacks to that in raw milk. But yeah, when you have 1 or 2 or 3 cows, you know each individual cow inside and out. Yeah.
I want to just go back to a little bit before when you were saying starting the babies on the kefir or whatever. I mean, are you like giving them a bottle of kefir?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking. Right. So when I'm so my daughter now, who's 6.5, who's never been sick, we make little kefir popsicles in the summer, and she can eat those. So you can make them in smoothies. But if you've got a baby, the important thing there is to get the mom, get her digestive system back working, and get her on some probiotics and get the baby nursing. If they're not nursing their babies, because we have people that come to us because they've adopted and they can't nurse their babies, they'll make a raw milk formula, and that will have the probiotics in it. And that's in the Nourishing Traditions book. And we have lots of people that do the raw milk formula at home and have very, very healthy babies too. So yeah, if your baby is healthy and not doing that, there's no reason to start kefir till they're much older. We started yogurt under a year, raw milk yogurt, but kefir's pretty strong for them. So yeah, but the most important thing is get mom healthy, so then she's healthy and the baby will inherit that. A couple of websites, shampooandcreamery.com. You can sign up to get automatic email updates about once a month. We send out information on our cheese classes, which are also nutrition classes, or combined, and then we offer straight nutrition classes and how to cook nourishing traditional type foods all through class. We have a farm camp in the summer that's really wonderful and popular. And we also, I do raw milk dairy consulting, and I have a list of about 200 producers in Oregon. So if you're getting milk from a raw milk producer and they don't test, they can always contact us. We work with people all the time to help them through that process. And then once they get the test results for the first time, they usually don't know what to do with it. So then we help them, okay, this means you need to clean, how much bleach are you using? Are you even using bleach? Are you using an iodine-based teat dip? So we can troubleshoot with them to help them improve. And we've had dairies all over Portland that have worked with us to, in the last year and a half, to improve their raw milk. And I started the Oregon Raw Milk Producers Association a year and a half ago in response to the E. coli outbreak that happened in Wilsonville, when I realized that, there are no resources for producers in Oregon and really the Northwest. So we started this just to improve the pool of raw milk in Oregon. And I can tell you in the last year and a half, it's improved immensely. We have meetings every quarter where they're educational events. We're bringing in a dairy consultant. We'll spend all day learning things. We email each other test results and say, hey, what would you do in this? So we've created this culture in Oregon, hopefully this collaborative culture of raw milk producers working together. And it's only about 10% of them that work together, but those are the ones whose raw milk improves. They can charge more for their milk because people know it's safe, which means then they can cover the extra expenses of the things that keep it safe. So it's really quite a little network that's growing. And we have a site just for that. It's called rawmilkpro.com. And what that stands for is rawmilkproducers.com, but I like that, raw milk, become a raw. We try to, it's just really important to me that we have this safe pool of raw milk out there so that every mom, every person with cancer that calls us and wants milk, and I have to put them on a waiting list, or everyone with any disease they're fighting off can find safe raw milk eventually. Yeah.
Are you willing to do consulting for farmers who aren't in Oregon?
Oh, yeah, actually I do. Yeah, we do a lot by phone.
I'm from Missouri.
There is a ton I can do by phone.
Okay.
People will call me and we will walk through their milking process on the phone. You can do a lot by that. So yeah, I've had people call from Indiana and Texas and all over. So yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Is there a marked difference between food-grade bleach and what we would term as regular bleach?
Yeah, well, that's something I learned over the last few years, because food-grade bleach is just double the concentration of household bleach. So it's not different. It's just it's 12% bleach, and Clorox you buy in the store for your washing machine is 6% bleach. That's the only difference. Yep. So yeah, that's food-grade bleach, and we only use about a tablespoon per couple gallons of water to sanitize our equipment. So you don't need very much. And as soon as organic material hits bleach, it's inactivated. So it's not like you're getting raw milk filled with bleach. And believe me, if you're milking cows, you got manure flying everywhere, you want your equipment sanitized with food-grade bleach. And you can use household bleach, you just need to use twice as much. You need to use half a cup or a cup instead of the amount we use. So, yes, sir.
What's the optimum time after you receive raw milk to drink it to derive full health benefits?
That's a great question. So when my mom was a kid, her mom went out and milked the cow, and she put the milk on the counter, never chilled it or refrigerated it, and they drank that milk all day, and maybe even the next morning until the fresh milk came in. And by the next morning, it's been sitting there. It is full of probiotics, and so trillions and trillions of probiotics in there because they've been multiplying all day. So, but in our culture, our palates are trained to want milk, be fresh and ice cold and not really have any taste. And the only way you get that is to inactivate that bacteria as soon as it comes out of the cow by putting it in ice water. But if you're drinking your milk a week later that you picked up at the dairy the week before, you haven't lost anything in there. If anything, just by setting it out on the counter and putting it back in, you do have some of that good bacteria in there multiplying, and you're getting a little bit more cultured product.
So the enzymes as well as probiotics are active for at least a week?
Yeah. Yeah, and if you turn it into yogurt and kefir, even more, even multiplied. Yes?
Hi,
Uh-huh.
In terms of then, even if you are looking for raw milk, to then have your animals tested for A2,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the natural, the A1, my understanding is basically that with breeding for productivity, we've actually also changed the proteins in milk are related to absorption and health.
Mm-hmm.
Did you look into that in terms of when you were selecting your herd? Did you have them tested? Because I know you have jerseys, which a lot of people say are tested.
Yeah, that's a really good question. This is an argument going out amongst the dairy people. I do not test my cows, to answer that question, for A2. And basically, the reason is, out of 125 families, nobody ever requires it. And it's one, we work 15-hour days. It's one more thing to have to do. If 50% of my customers came to me and said, you have to test your cows, then I'd be forced to do it. So I have not done it. And when I look into it, there's a lot of criticism. And also, we have hundreds of people who drink our milk who have all the wonderful, amazing health benefits, the same and more that we've had. So our milk is working. I do have jerseys, which there's a high percentage chance that they're A2 cows. The farm I buy them from, people have gone there to test. They might test 3 cows for A2, and 2 of them will come up A2. So I figure there's a pretty high percentage mine are A2, except that I see people getting all the health benefits and from our milk, period. Our Holstein dairy up the street, people get all the amazing benefits from their Holstein cow's raw milk. So who am I to go in there and say, wait, your cows are different? And then also there's some criticism because the company who does the A2 testing, they have the patent on that. It's one company. They won't tell us what the genetic, they won't describe it to us. So there's only one person out there who's making all this money on this, and they won't explain it to the rest of us. And
are they here in the U.S.? Because I know,
I think you can get it. Yeah, but I think you can get it done in California. Yeah. To be honest, yeah, I haven't looked into it because I haven't been. But the other thing is, there are people who work with A2 cows, and they have their dairies full of A2 cows. And the A2 cows, they say, they're harder to work with. They're flightier and more nervous and have problems that way. And they're wild, and so they have them for a while, then they get rid of their A2 cows because they're difficult to work with. So to me, this is reports I'm getting from different people that they have personality, just like you might have a kid with a different personality, the cows do too. So me on a small family farm where we have 15 families a day in to get their milk, and the kids are welcome to run up and wave to the cows, and I've had cows attack my daughter and put her on the floor. I won't keep a rambunctious cow around there. It's not worth it. We need to have nice cows. So I'm not convinced that A2 is as big or dramatic of a difference as, maybe the book, The Devil in the Milk, might tell you or something. And I don't see that out in all our hundreds and thousands of people we work with either. So yeah, it's something I would need a lot more proof on that in the future. Mm-hmm. Well, A2 cows. So we have modernized our cows. The Holstein is a modern bred cow. They will give 13 gallons of milk a day, which is 2 or 3 times what my cows will give because they've been bred for production. And in doing so, we've lost some of there's a chromosomal difference in those cows versus cows before then. And so they say that certain the milk from those A1 cows or the modern breeds like a Holstein will not have all the healing properties and health benefits of a milk from an A2 cow. I haven't experienced that, and it's not just one person, but it's like, well, all these thousands of people are having amazing health recovery. So I haven't seen that there's anything to that yet. So I'm not ready to rush out and check my herd and then replace them with A2 cows because there's just too much controversy and too much proof, but for both sides.
We have 3 minutes till we have to.
Okay, let me see where we're at, and then we'll have questions, and I'll get you. We're almost done. Oh yeah, look at that. So you're here this weekend. I first joined Weston Price 8 years ago, and the Farm to Consumer Legal Defense Fund 5 years ago. You guys, if you're here enjoying this farm fresh food and you love being able to go to your farmer and buy raw milk, and not just that, but pork and beef and vegetables and eggs and all those things. These two organizations are so valuable to be a member of. You will continue supporting these types of events and research, and farmers like me too, who I benefited a lot from the help of the Legal Defense Fund. So I'm just excited that we're able to have this in Portland here this week. And so thanks for your participation, and hope you will consider joining if you're not already joining. So questions? Yes, you had your hand up earlier.
My doctor told me that there was French cows and then there was other cows. And it's not so much the chromosome, but a protein, digestive protein that's in the French cows that have been screened out for us. And so there's where the problem comes. And there's only like 2 herds of these French cows in the U.S.
Again, that's great. I don't know about that. Our jerseys work great, and so to me, that's running around and trying to find one little thing when I see this big holistic program we have going that helps heal thousands of people. There may be something to that, but I haven't heard that. So maybe that's what he bases his practice on, and that works great, but I don't, I haven't heard about that. Yes?
I was wondering if there's anything special regarding seniors. I know this was a baby talk, but for seniors?
Yeah, you know, the thing about seniors is you start to lose, your enzymes are depleted the older you get. So it's really important for seniors to have be eating a lot of enzymes, whether that's cultured foods with every meal, yogurt with every meal, kefir. So yes, absolutely. I mean, when they study the cultures where people live to 115, 120 years old, they are drinking, you know, the mountains of Russia, they're drinking kombucha and eating kefir and sauerkraut. Almost their whole diet is full of enzyme-rich foods. So yes, absolutely, because they do deplete the older you get. Yeah?
In one of your slides, you weren't able to go through the whole thing, but I noted you said that only cows in barn, no poultry or anything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the cross-contamination, trying to make sure you have safe raw milk. So in America, we have this idea of the cute manger scene with the cow and the horse and the pig and the donkey and the chickens. Well, in a dairy farm, and that is cute and idyllic, but and you can have intermixed species on a dairy farm, but you still need to treat it like the dairy farm. It's just a dairy farm. So on our farm, we have the dairy cows in one place, and the chickens, turkeys, everything else, horses, all on the other side of the farm. Because chickens, for one, carry Campylobacter and Salmonella. So when I was a one-cow dairy and we had a few customers, it was okay, but our liability increases. You know, we had our chickens grazing with our cows, so we just separated those out. That's not it. That's something that you have to look at. And if they have 1 cow and 3 chickens, it's not that big a deal. But you'll see a dairy with 2 cows and 50 chickens and a pig, and they're all running around the pasture together. More opportunity for contamination, and their test scores will show that. So if you go to a dairy, what you want to see is your raw milk setup and your cows and all over here, and the chickens and birds and everything else somewhere else. One more question. Oh, well, I'll get you back at the table. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious. I know with a lot of people in dairy, there's often like stuffiness or cleanliness when you have it increases like snoring and.
With dairy?
With dairy, it's often typical. I had the experience that even when I drink raw milk, it's delicious and I'm not lactose intolerant, but I get really stuffy. And I'm wondering if that decreases as you continue to drink it, or if that's just something that happens in some people, if there's some way to...
You know what I would suggest for you? Have you heard of the GAPS diet? I would look into that, because it sounds like you might need to do some gut healing first and then reintroduce raw dairy, and you'll be fine. Have you read the GAPS book?
I know some of it, yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds... That's what I find. If people can't tolerate raw milk, try healing your gut first, reintroducing these things, and most people end up... Because to answer your question, stuffiness should not be a part of it. Yeah, you should not be getting stuffy. So it sounds like you've got some gut healing that needs to happen first. Okay, thank you all. We'll see you. I'm going to head to that too.